Talk and rock radio, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
Every time we meet, everything is sweet. Oh, you're so tender, I must surrender. My love is your love now and forever. You're the one that I long to kiss. Baby, you're the one that I really miss. You're the one that I'm dreaming of. Baby, you're the one that I love.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk and Rock Radio. My special guest today is someone that I am sharing connections to spiritually and musically. We both share connections to Elvis. He has shared the stage with Larry Gatlin and my cousin, a Gatlin, not the same family, but they were best friends at Odessa High School in Odessa, Texas, and they were on the same football team. And he married my cousin, Pam Halbert. We both recorded at Queen City Studios in Cincinnati, Ohio. He comes from the Mennonite religion, which my 9 greats-grandfather started. I saw him perform with the Stamps Quartet 20 years ago here in El Paso at the Trinity United Methodist Church. We are both tenors and can hit high C. And we both grow facial hair the same way, only I shaved mine off over here. So anyway, from Nashville, Tennessee, I want to share with you all today my friend, the amazing Royce Taylor. How you doing, buddy?
Thank you, Rick. That was quite the introduction. I'm doing great. Thank you. It's really a pleasure for me to wow, you kind of caught me off guard there. It's a pleasure to be sharing this segment with you. I'm excited. I'm always excited to be introduced and to connect with new folks that probably know a lot about the things that I've been connected with, but wouldn't necessarily know me personally.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I feel like I've known you most of my life. It's just that I hadn't met you in person yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's been a very, I jokingly say, and I think I probably shared this with you, that I simply say I've had an extraordinary, ordinary life because I'm just this ordinary guy who has been privileged to do some extraordinary things across the last 56, 57 years of my musical career. It's just, I pinch myself every day. I really do. I say that jokingly, but there's a lot of truth to that. I may not do it physically, but I wake up every morning saying, wow, well, Lord, what are we going to do today?
Well, let's jump right into that. Let's talk about the path that you took that got you to your musical career. Let's hear about it, because it's not the conventional type that a lot of the guys I've talked to that I've interviewed before. Let's hear your interesting story.
Well, I was the shy kid in school. In fact, I was probably, it kind of astounds me now, because more people that I went to school with know who I am now than they ever did when we were actually in class together, because I was the quiet guy. I wasn't a brainiac. I wasn't into sports. I had very little interaction on that kind of a social level in school. And so when I was 15, almost 16 years old, some friends of mine invited me to go to what would be considered a mega church. It was a 2,000 seat auditorium at nearby Youngstown, Ohio. I'm in Northeast Ohio here. In fact, I'm in my parental home right now, which I inherited when my folks passed away. I still reside in Nashville, Tennessee, but I've been spending a lot of time up here. Folks, forgive me, cleaning out 63 years of depression baby marriage. So if you know what that's like, you know what I'm up against. It's been an interesting ride. Getting back to my my youth, invited me to go to this mega church. As a matter of fact, it was the brother of the famous televangelist Rex Humbard, who had a 5,000 seat Cathedral Tomorrow, and his brother had a 2,000 seat auditorium in nearby Youngstown called Calvary Temple. His name was Clem Humbard. So they invited me to this. Now, I wanted to go to this church because Clem and his wife Priscilla and their children had a TV show on our local station. And I wanted to go see what television stars looked like. You know, I mean, for a 15-year-old kid, somebody on TV, that's pretty cool. So I went. And that night, we arrived early, and I was invited into the youth group, and that never happened before, not like that. And then somebody said, "Oh, we're trying to fill the choir. Anybody here sing?" And somebody pointed to me and said, "Well, come on and sing with the choir." And I thought, "Oh, I better sing with the choir." I went, well, okay. So I sang with the choir that night. I mean, I didn't even belong there, but they invited me to sing in the choir. So I'm sitting in the seats, and he preaches a marvelous sermon. I don't know what he preached about. I really don't. I just know that at the end, I was compelled, strongly compelled, to take that walk down and have him pray with me. And that night, everything changed. Everything changed. And I asked my friends that had invited me if I could travel along with them on a more regular basis, because I really felt a home there. I felt something special in that place. And as a result of this man's teaching, I grew exponentially in my understanding of things that I had heard about all of my life growing up in the Mennonite church. This wasn't a Mennonite church, but the Bible foundations that I'd heard about all my life now were coming alive with this man's way of teaching it. So it was very special, and it was great for me. But that was just a portion of what happened, because in that youth group were two guys that wanted to sing, and they heard that I played guitar. So they said, "Can you play guitar and sing with us? We've been asked to sing a special song for the church." And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So we got together and sang our special song, and somebody liked it, invited us to come and sing at another church. And I said, "Well, that's kind of cool." And then the Youth for Christ organization heard about us and asked us to sing for their youth rallies. And they were asking us to come regularly. So we started learning more songs, obviously. And this thing just began to blossom and grow. One of the guys had to go off to college. So suddenly we were reduced to being a duet. But that duet was the foundation for what I'm doing today. And it just grew. It just, pinch me again. It just happened to whatever we were doing. Now, I need to say that in the aftermath of all of this, and I'm going to get really emotional here all of a sudden. In the aftermath of all of this, I knew that my life had changed enough that suddenly I had a career goal, and that career goal was going to be to go into ministry. And so I thought that meant, finish high school, run off to Bible college, get whatever degree you get in Bible college, take a church, and live happily ever after. But that's not what God had in mind. So the exponential growth within the word and understanding what the scriptures were saying, and this calling to preach, I developed this preacher mentality. One young man that was singing with us in that trio, the one that remained after the other man went to college, had a serious car accident. And when I say serious, I mean this was serious. He had the same neck fracture as Christopher Reeve that played Superman. And they put him in a traction, which was an old-fashioned traction. They put screws in the top of his skull, and they had these weights suspended over the bed, and he wasn't allowed to move for weeks. And when they felt that he had finally knitted back enough not to be in jeopardy of paralysis, which was on the table, then he was allowed to wear a neck brace and slowly began to walk again. And but he was healed very quickly, because by the end of the summer, he was well enough that we could start singing together again. And that was the actual birth of my group, the Gospel Chords. And our first introduction of that name and our music was once again at a Youth for Christ rally at the Mahoning County Fair in Canfield, Ohio, back 1967. So I'm coming up on that anniversary here in Labor Day week. It's just before Labor Day weekend. We're going to have 57 years now. 56, 57. I've lost track.
This is my story. This is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long.
I think that group, the Gospel Chords, before your next big event that took place for about 12 years, I think.
Yes. We were together until 1979. We grew from that little duet to a trio to a quartet, and before it was all said and done, we had as many as 8 or 9 people traveling with us in a bus, because we assembled a 4-piece band and a 4-piece quartet and a sound man.
Now, when we talked before, Royce, we didn't really get into Queen City Studios, but I know QCA was known for their big thing was working with gospel groups. I know they loved working with gospel groups, big choirs and stuff like that. And so when you recorded there, was that with one of those groups, or was that later on with the Vogues, or what was that?
Oh, that was the Gospel Chords. Yes, we actually, over our 12-year history, had 3 recording contracts. The first one was with American artists out of Springfield, Missouri. And then we went with a Baldwin sound company, Baldwin recording company. Actually, it was Baldwin Studios. I'm piecing this together here now. Baldwin Studios in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg area. But the record label was the Hymn Tone label. And we kind of joked that we were a contemporary group, but we were on the Hymn Tone label. And then QCA invited us to come and be a part of their family in the late 70s.
That was a neat little studio. I really enjoyed working there. Especially they had a really neat timpani drum, I remember, and I played that on one of our medleys that we did. I know I used the timpani at the very end, so that was a real added treat for our time there. We knocked out our album there in the course of 3 days. That's all we had, and it was in between gigs while we were touring. But anyway, well, talk some now about in 1991 what happened.
Well, in 1979, I'll just set the stage for this. In 1979, as the Gospel Chords were winding down, because now Guys were getting married, having children, families, wives didn't want them touring anymore, and it was difficult. We were going through personnel changes rather rapidly at the time, and it was discouraging. So we decided that that was probably it. It was probably time to just pack it in and say it's been a good run, and God bless you all. And I'm the only one out of that pack that is still touring full time. But the rest of the guys that I'm still in contact with went into various types of praise and worship music or choir leadership or something connected with the church. So, to my knowledge, none of them really abandoned the music business entirely. David, my original partner, purchased Capital Booking Service, and now he's partnered with a guy in Chicago, Capital International Productions. So he is still a booking agent doing gigantic things all around the country and has done very well for himself. So that said, here I am, 1979. Suddenly I've got to find out what to do. And I'm confronted with, now I got to make a living going to work every day like a real person instead of this touring schedule. And the decade of the 80s, for those of you who remember the decade of the 80s and following the decade of the 70s, the inflation and all of the stuff, and then Reaganomics kicking in, jobs came to me and left me in a heartbeat. And I had 8 jobs in 10 years of the 80s, and most of them left me because I would be growing in the company, and all of a sudden the owner of the company would come in and he'd say, guys, I have some good news and bad news. I sold the company. The bad news is they're bringing their own people, and so they won't need you. And really, that happened. It was a joke in my church. The people stopped asking me, how's your job going? They'd say, what are you doing now? And so in 1990, 1991, I was really trying to find, I was doing merchandising, working with a merchandising company. And once again, same scenario. I'd been with this company for several years and doing quite well. I had a company car, had all the benefits. I mean, I'm high cotton, for a guy who's gone through all of this. The owner came in and said, I sold the company. And it's like, oh, here we go again.
Here we go again.
So that's when my one of the singers that used to sing with me called me up and said, hey, the Vogues are looking for a tenor singer. You want to go back on the road? And I said, I don't know, maybe. Forgive me, guys. I had been in gospel music. I really didn't remember that much about the Vogues. Now, when they started saying, oh, they did 5 O'Clock World, and turn around and look at me, and I went, oh my God, those guys, they're looking for a tenor. Yeah, okay, sure. What do I have to do? So they hooked me up for an audition, and what they did, they were trying to be fair. The Vogues were trying to be fair and use the same songs to audition so that they could have a level playing field for everyone to be the same. And so they sent me the 4 big hits, 5 O'Clock, Turn Around, Look at Me, Special Angel, and You're the One. And so I dug them up and listened to the recordings and learned the tenor part. And so I showed up at the audition and they said, do you need a music stand? I said, no. They said, well, where are your cheat sheets? I said, I don't have any. And they said, well, how are we going to do these songs? I said, I learned them. You did? I said, well, wasn't I supposed to? That's the long and short of it. So they said, well, okay, what do you want to start with? I said, pick one. So I think we started with You're the One, and I sang the song, and they went, oh, wow, do you know 5 O'Clock World? I said, was it on the list? Yeah. So the truth be told, I mean, when we finished the audition, they said, "Do you want the job?" I mean, they didn't even dicker about it. They said, "Do you want the job?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure."
And what's your coat size, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was it. I went on the road with them in 1991, and it was like being in a gospel group, but the lyrics were different. I mean, it was just, I was singing harmony again. I was singing 4-part harmony with these guys, and we were doing all kinds of fun stuff and great music. I mean, my goodness, I'm really thrilled, and I jokingly said this on the Mike Huckabee show that we did an interview about a year ago. I said, I'm really glad to be with the Vogues and the music that they did, and Turn Around, Look at Me, and 5 O'Clock World, and You're My Special Angel, and Moments to Remember, and so many other great songs, and not have to be that poor guy at this age singing, Why Must I Be a Teenager in Love? There is one worse. You're 16, you're beautiful, and you're mine.
And you're going to go to jail. Oh.
So I'm very pleased not to have to be in that category. But, for the guys that had the songs, God bless them.
Yeah. Yeah. Why couldn't they have changed that age on that song to 17 or 18,
Well, if I were to sing it now, it'd be You're 60, you're beautiful, and you're mine.
Oh, well, talking about the Vogues, they had over 24 popular hit songs. They did really well.
24 songs that actually charted. Yes. And probably 12 to 13 of those were the ones that most people actually remember. And the others were sort of more regional hits that people in the greater Pittsburgh area would remember, because the Pittsburgh radio stations just played the fire out of the Vogues because they were, hometown boys done good. So.
There is someone walking behind you. Turn around, look at me. There is someone watching your footsteps. Turn around, look at me. There is someone who really needs you. Here's my heart in my hand. Turn around, look at me, understand, that there's someone to stand beside you. Turn around, look at me, and there's someone to love and guide you. Turn around, look at me. Oh, I've waited, but I'll wait forever for you to come to me. Look at someone who really loves you. Turn around, look at me. Turn around, look at me.
But the national exposure was huge. The Vogues appeared on every major talk show, music show, bandstand, Ed Sullivan, I mean, all of them. Mike Douglas, all of these great shows. Merv Griffin, they did the Merv Griffin. They were on a Red Skelton show.
Interesting that you said Red Skelton, because Red Skelton's manager is who introduced my wife and I.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow. Well, there you go. We got another connection.
Yeah. His name was George Elias. He's passed away now, but we even flew him when we were playing in Chicago. He was with the John B. Rogers production company from Fostoria, Ohio.
Fostoria.
And he would come to El Paso, and they would do an annual show. My Lions Club would always put together a show here annually, and that's where my wife and I met in 1968, and then we started dating in 69, and we got married in 72, and we've been, well, it'll be 51 years in June. Next in a couple of months. But yeah, it's but George Elias, what a guy, and yeah, we flew him into Chicago to hear our group, and I was interested in him writing some material for us, and so anyway, we're not going to talk about that right now. But the bottom line is, you had a great period of time there with the Vogues, and then come around 2002, something else happened.
Yes. Well, at the end of the 90s, Bill Burkett and Hugh Geyer, two original members of the Vogues that hadn't toured for years, but took, again, career jobs and raised children and did all of the things that you do when your group decides, our touring time is over. And now they were reaching retirement age from the career, and oldies radio had kicked in the mid 80s and was starting to play the Vogues music again. So they were getting invitations to do some shows. And so Stan Ilitch, who owned the trademark that I had toured with for years, said, these guys, I'd kind of like to bring them back, because, having two original members in the group is a pretty big deal. And I said, have at it. I'm thinking about going back into gospel music. And so Hugh came back. I got an invitation to join the Stamps Quartet. For those who know the Stamps Quartet as a gospel group, they were one of the three big ones at the time. There was the Blackwood Brothers, the Statesmen, and the Stamps. Those were the big names. And when I heard the Stamps were looking for a tenor, well, yeah, sure. Works for me. What I didn't expect was that they were still doing Elvis-related programs. I didn't see that in the cards at the time. And so I'm gearing up to get back into singing gospel music in churches again. And all of a sudden we're doing these big Elvis events, and I'm going, whoa, wow, I didn't see that coming. That once again, I started in gospel. God put me in the Vogues, so I'm doing rock and roll. I want to go back to gospel, so God puts me in a group that's doing both. And here we go. I was prepared for the Elvis music and those kind of programs because of the years I spent in the 90s with the Vogues. And when my time with the Stamps drew to a close, I did go back into full-time gospel music with a group called the Tony Brothers, and they were in Texas, by the way. They were out of the Dallas area. Went on the road with them for about 4 years, doing just churches and gospel music. And then the Imperials, we had done a joint recording. I'm really jumping ahead here, but I need to jump back. When the Stamps and the Imperials were doing these Elvis-related programs, particularly something called Elvis the Concert. Now, I need to explain this for those who may have heard about it, but haven't seen it. And those who have seen it know exactly what I'm talking about. The producer of this, Stig Edren, took all of the video footage of Elvis Presley from his shows in Vegas, the comeback special, the Hawaii special, and he remastered those videos, I don't know, 10, 12 times to remove everything except Elvis's singing. And as much as that was digitally possible to do, there are some segments where the audience was clapping or girls were screaming or whatever that was so close to his singing, they couldn't take it away without ruining that. So that moment would have to stay. But everything else was removed. And they would take this show rather into these gigantic arenas, and I'm talking 20, 30, 40, 50,000 arena, and they would project him on a gigantic jumbotron in the middle of the stage, and the rest of us would replicate the music live to his singing on these videos. Now, Ronnie Tutt, the drummer for the TCB band, Elvis's drummer, had an earphone, and he would hear a click track from this recording. This was a multi-million-dollar production. It was huge. The equipment that we brought in to put this together was just unbelievable. It was the biggest thing I had ever been part of, to be honest with you. It was huge. these arenas, and Ronnie would hear the click clack, click click click. Once the show started, it was gone. You had to stay with it because there was no turning back. So Elvis was singing. He was on the screen singing, and we're doing all of the music, the orchestra, the TCB band, Sweet Inspirations, the Stamps, and then again the Imperials later on. I'm the only one that did that show with both groups. I'm the only
Nice.
one playing with both groups in that. So when the Imperials took over after the Stamps, I was there singing the tenor part, just as I had done with the Stamps.
And what was so cool too, Royce, is that you were there with James Burton and Glenn
Yes.
D. Harden as well. You know,
Yes.
they were
Yes,
original
indeed.
players that were with Elvis's show, you know.
Yeah, great guys too. Wonderful friends. James has had some health issues this last year, but he is just a wonderful friend. A real quick story. We were doing this production in Paris, France, and we were staying at a place called the Hotel California, which I have to admit, when I checked in, I wondered if I would ever leave. But we had just checked. We had rolled into town on the tour bus into Paris in the wee hours of the morning. I don't know. It was something like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning by the time we rolled in and got checked in and then went to our rooms. So I had a very short morning. And about 11 o'clock, my phone is ringing. I'm thinking, oh, what's that? So I picked up the phone. He goes, "Hey, Royce, this is James. You want to go get something to eat?" And I went, "Yeah, sure, absolutely, I will." So we went and had food together. It was great. That was really the first time I had a chance just to sit and speak with him alone, because he was always surrounded by people. I mean, James was just always with somebody.
Yeah,
And
for the viewing audience, James Burton was a guitar player and a phenomenal
yes,
player, and he's played with so many people, but really well known for being the backing guitarist for Elvis's shows. Yeah,
he
nice.
started with Rick Nelson. He
Yeah,
started with Rick, went with Elvis, and has been with John Denver and Emmylou Harris, and oh my goodness, the list just goes on and on and on. I don't know how many recordings he played on in L.A. studios. He was a studio player with the Wrecking Crew
yeah.
up there. So yeah, he's
Along with Tommy. Yeah,
yes, that's correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent. I love this. I love this story so much, man. This is so cool. So through all this time, you have managed to balance between the singing rock and doing the gospel music ministry. I mean, how hard was it, and has it been for you to maintain the balance between these two?
Well, to be honest, the difficulty initially, the difficulty was with some of the churches, and to be honest, the conservative groups questioned, how in the world can you do rock and roll music? Well, rock and roll got a pretty bad rap back in the early 70s. Some guys wrote books about rock and roll being the devil's music and all this stuff. And so there was some resistance when I would say that I had been working with Elvis and had been working. But that has now kind of passed. There's just a few hardcore conservatives that might resist this.
Though I would think, though, Royce, that in looking back at all of that, if these people had really done their homework, when I say people, the resistance group, if they had really learned about Elvis's involvement with gospel music, and I mean that he and you are very much the same in that
Yes.
regard, because you both came out of gospel, and I mean, to Elvis, that was everything before
Yes.
he got into the mainstream rock and what he ended up being, so famous for. I mean, you would still go to his shows. I mean, when we played in Lake Tahoe at the Sahara and we were billed there, with Elvis, in his show, he would be doing "How Great Thou Art."
Yes.
He would be doing that, and I mean, it's It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I mean,
true.
if you're comparing gospel and rock, I mean, he tied it all together.
Yes, he did. And it was his gospel. He Touched Me album and the other album that he had produced in that late 60s, 67, 68, 69 era that David and I drew some of our very early songs from for our own set list, because with Elvis singing them, they were quite popular at the time. Um, I I have to this if I can tell this correctly to make it make the point. Um, I was working with a group in Ohio, a gospel quartet, and did a lot of conservative churches. And the owner of this group was very timid about mentioning the Vogues, and I said, "No, you don't have to be." I said, "The Vogues had great music. There's nothing evil about any of that." He says, "Well, yeah, but it was rock and roll music." And so we come into a church one night, and we're setting up the speakers and the sound system. And this pastor walks in. He says, "Which one of you is Royce?" I said, "That would be me." He goes, "You sing with the Vogues." I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He says, "Oh, my wife and I love the Vogues. That was one of our favorite groups when we were dating. And we play the songs all the time. Man, it's really good to meet you." And I turned to the guy that owned the group and I said, "Told you."
You can't beat that endorsement. Oh, by the way, was that from the Glory Way Quartet? Was that?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, the Glory
okay.
Way Quartet. They're doing great too, by the way. They have really catapulted into a very, very strong presence now in the gospel music world. And I'll be filling in with them here in the next couple of weeks on a trip out west. Their baritone singer has had to resign because he's had some family issues and so forth, and so they're in the market right now for another tenor, another baritone singer. And I told them, out of my experience, I said, "Don't just get somebody, get the right one, because those are tough shoes to fill." And John, who has held that position now for the last 7 or 8 years, was very vital to their growth. And I said, "You don't want to go backwards. You want to find someone who's capable of filling that spot." Said, "Well, do you want to do it?" I says, I would be disappointing you, because between my Vogues schedule and now the Happy Together tour for the summer, and then my Elvis show, which I have my own Elvis show as a soloist now, and I don't dress up in a jumpsuit. I don't put on sideburns. I I don't dye my hair.
Thank you for that.
I would be Elvis had he lived, with the gray hair and all that sort of thing. But I have a program I call the Gospel Music of Elvis Presley, with a few surprises. And I'm hoping with this to continue filling a void because most of the Elvis tribute artists, both jumpsuit guys and regular singers, really don't focus on the gospel side of that so much. But there's a need for it. There's a market for it, and I'm trying to kind of fill that void, and it keeps me connected to the thousands of people. My goodness, the thousands of people I've had a chance to meet and get to know, really, on a personal level. That's the other thing I pinch myself when I realize that on my Facebook, my private Facebook page has 5,000 people who follow me on Facebook. Moi? Really? Seriously? Okay. So I do feel an obligation to be personal. I feel an obligation to make myself available to someone who's going to support and take what I do seriously. And hopefully, it has always been my goal, always, in all the music, in all of the productions, in all of the things, I have always wanted to go away from the place leaving something of value behind. Not just me, not just music, not just some laughs, not just some heartthrobs, but something meaningful that can affect someone's life from now through eternity.
Mr. Royce Taylor, do you learn when you travel on this tour around in Europe? Do you learn any other languages?
I try.
You try. You learn any German?
Dankeschön. Vielen Dank.
How about Norwegian?
Well, that would be Tusen Dank.
Do you know any Italian?
Grazie.
Grazie.
Ciao.
But do you know any more Italian?
Pizza.
Pizza. Pasta.
Spaghetti. Spaghetti. You talk a very good Italian, Royce.
I think we should try to give him an Italian key.
An Italian key.
An Italian key. One of you guys, you have an Italian key?
Malato sole, you bellone.
That's pretty good.
Oh, sole mio, stan fronte a te. Oh, sole, oh, sole mio, stan fronte a te. Stan fronte a te.
When I first saw you, with your smile so tender, my heart was captured, my soul surrendered. I spent a lifetime waiting for the right time. Now that you're near, this time is here. At last we see police.
It's now or never. Come hold me tight. It's me, my darling. You're mine tonight. Tomorrow will be too late. It's now or never. My love won't wait.
Just like a willow, we'll dry in ocean. Wait with us through love and sweet devotion. Your lips excite me,
Let your arms invite me, for who knows when we'll meet again this way. Come on. It's now or never. Come hold me tight. It's me, my darling. Be mine tonight. Tomorrow will be too late. It's now or never. My love one way. 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 It's now or never. My love
That is my goal, to leave something of value behind in my wake. So I'm not just there breathing air somebody else needs. Some folks from Germany were visiting Nashville, and they wanted to hear some music downtown and asked me if I could show them around. So I scrambled. I don't know. I said, I never go downtown. I don't really know what's there. There's Tootsies and Legends and the Stage and all these other honky tonks that everybody goes to. They're world famous, blah, blah, blah. Well, my close friend that was in the music business down there said, go to a place called Robert's Western World, because they've got a band that just plays oldies country. They're classic country.
Okay.
And you'll love these guys. You'll love these musicians. They're just second to none. They're fabulous. So I took the guys down there, and they were really digging on the music. And all of a sudden the band changed. And I didn't realize that they changed bands every 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
So another band came on. The one we heard was fabulous. This other band came on, turned out to be the house band that Tom was wanting me to hear. And so we sat there. We were going to leave about midnight. We couldn't leave. The music was just so good that
Wow.
we stayed until closing at 2 a.m. And when they all said goodnight, thank you for coming, the lead singer of this group walked off the little stage and directly over to me. And he said, some folks here tell me you sing with the Imperials that backed up Elvis Presley. And I went, who would have told you that? He says, well, is it true? I said, well, yeah, it's true. He says, are you in a hurry? I'd like to talk with you, but I have a couple things I have to do. I said, I have no place to go but home. So I stuck around, and he took care of paying his guys and whatever else he had to do. And he came out and he starts asking me questions that only someone in the Imperials could really answer. And I, of course, knew the answers, so I satisfied that. And then he says, can we sing something together? I said, yeah, I don't know if I know everything you know, but we can try something. So we attempted Cool Clear Water or some crazy old country thing, and it wasn't all that good. But he said to me, do you know that song that Elvis wanted the quartet to sing by themselves that he didn't sing on? I said, you mean Sweet, Sweet Spirit? He says, yeah. Do you know that one? I said, we sing it every night. He says, would you sing that for me right now? I said, sure. So he strummed the guitar with a key, and I started, there's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord. Sang through, when we shall leave this place. He strummed the guitar. I swear I was dead on the pitch. I didn't drift at all. And he screamed. He says, did you hear that? This guy sings with the Imperials that backed up Elvis Presley. This is the real deal. Wow, that's great. And I
Oh
was like,
man.
he says, "Can you come back tomorrow night? I want you to hear my real band." I said, "Oh my gosh, what did I hear tonight?" He says, "Those were my B players."
Oh my gosh.
I said, "Yeah, I'm free this weekend. I'll come back tomorrow night." So we got there, and these guys, so the guys the night before were incredible. These guys were absolutely amazing. And at 10 minutes till midnight, he says, "I met a gentleman last night. He's here again tonight. He sang a song for me, and I would like him to come up and sing it for all of you."
Oh my
And
gosh.
my knees turned to noodles. I'm like, "Say what?" Because these people here, it's a honky tonk, and they're doing what people do in a honky tonk. You know, they're dancing, they're swing dancing, they're trying to pick up chicks, they're drinking booze. I mean, what you do in a honky tonk. And I walked up on stage, and his guys had no clue. He didn't tell them anything about this. He didn't give them any indication he was this. He pulled right out of the hat. And the guys are all looking at each other. What are we going to do? Who's this guy? What are we going to sing? And he says, no, guys. He says, it's okay. He says, he's going to sing this a cappella. And you could see it in their eyes like, he's going to what?
What?
He's going to what? So they're like, okay, whatever you say. So he strummed the guitar, and I started, "There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place." And the first row went quiet. "And I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord." Second, third row goes quiet. "There are sweet expressions on each face." Now it's quiet all the way back to the bar. When I hit that last note, "When we shall leave this place," the honky tonk was nearly silent, except for the very back corner where they weren't paying any attention to what was going on anyway. And there was that pause after the last note, and then the place erupted into applause. No one had ever stopped that honky tonk and made it silent and got an applause. No one. And the guy with the bass fiddle behind me, the bass upright, leaned over my shoulder and said, "Who the hell are you?"
I'm the amazing Royce Taylor.
I didn't do that. I just sang the
Oh
song.
my gosh.
God took over.
Wow, that's cool, man. What a
Oh my
story.
goodness. Yeah, it was just so, it was it it was just so incredible that the power of that song went out and silenced the room. I mean, even the workers at the bar had stopped.
How big was this room?
Well, it wasn't a just a normal little,
Honky
you know,
tonk?
storefront honky tonk, yeah. But so anytime that I would sneak in, and I usually would just sneak in if I went downtown. I wouldn't alert Jesse that I was coming. If he saw me in the audience, he'd have me come up and sing that every time. And it would have the same reaction every time. It was just amazing how that song would go. And because of him, I got a chance to sing at places like the Station Inn and a couple of other venues around Nashville. When he would be invited to take his band and sing someplace else, he'd have me come and sing that song, and we'd get the same reaction every time. His guys just started to expect it. You know, if it hadn't happened, they'd say, "What happened tonight?" You know, it was just incredible, just incredible.
Good for you, man. You know, and you were talking about, sharing your talent and everything, and in your supporters, and yeah, that's very important. But I also am so happy for you because you continually get to work with Frankie Avalon and Gary Puckett and Bill Medley and all, Beach Boys, all of these great musicians, rock and roll heroes, you know. And I mean, that is just invaluable in itself that you get to do this, man, and you get paid for it.
I get paid for it. Yes, yes. Yeah, this Happy Together tour has been a great opportunity to connect with these folks. So someone asked me once, "You know Gary Puckett?" I said, "Yeah," and he knows me.
He is such a nice guy. You know, I
He's a
talked to him
great guy.
I talked to him like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he was over in Australia. I just called him up and I said, "What's going on, man?" You know, and he said, "Hey, Rick, you know," he says, we're actually got 3 or 4 more concerts to do. We're in Australia right now." And I said, "Man, I had no idea," you know. But yeah, he is a real jewel. I mean, just such a nice guy and just great stories, great talent, still
Great.
sings well. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, the real package.
Yes, indeed. That's a fact.
Occasionally, you also perform with the Gaither Homecoming concerts that happen. How many
Yes.
of those are? How often does he do those, and how many have you been a part of?
Well, I've been a part of 3 or 4 of them, um, in a personal way. Um, the Imperials were invited several times. We did one called the Tent Revival, which was recorded at the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte, and then we did the Gatlinburg Gathering in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, with Bill, and then we did a couple at the Gaither Studios in Alexandria, Indiana, and he's got footage then of some of the other events that we were all part of. But those particular ones that I mentioned, they invited us, the Imperials, to sing and have a feature song. So that made it very special, just to be there and see all those gospel people that I've known for years. And some of those great guys were my heroes back in the day too. So
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's just
yeah,
it's so exciting that you're constantly immersed with working with the best, you know?
yes,
It
yes.
is, you have been really blessed, my friend, you know? It is so cool. I want to let everybody know how they can be in contact with you and you know, I think you go by on the internet LynnRoyceTaylor.com, right?
That's correct. Yes. My first name is Lynn. That was my mother's idea. My middle name is Royce. That was my dad's idea. Thank you, Dad. Uh, real quick story why I don't use Lynn, because, and this is true. This is as God is my witness. This is true. Every first day of school, when the teacher would call the roll for the first time, my name being Taylor, I knew I was near the end of the alphabet. And when the R's and the S's came, I was coming soon. And he or she, most likely a she, would say, "Lynn Taylor." And I'd say, "Here." And she'd look up and she'd go, "Oh." And I mean that. I mean, that would be that, "Oh." And she'd make a note. It's a boy.
Yeah.
Now, if that wasn't bad enough, in the 7th grade, I get my schedule for gym class, and it was not at the normal time. And I thought, oh, well, maybe they've switched something. So I went down to the gym class and walked in, and there was the girls' gym class. And the teacher said, "Oh, why are you here?" And I said, "I'm on the list." She, "Oh, no, you're not." And she grabbed me by the ear and dragged me to the office and said, "This isn't right." And I'm standing there thinking, I've been in the school system since kindergarten. You still don't know? So, and you know, I'd tell my mother these stories. "Oh, it's not that bad. I knew a boy named Lynn." Well, okay, maybe he didn't have that trouble, but I did. So when I started doing radio, one of the jobs that I had in the 80s, I had a great radio show, loved it, wasn't making any money. Wasn't able to feed the family, but I loved doing radio. Loved it. I jumped out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning to sign on at 6. I loved doing radio. It was great. But I couldn't go on the air as Lynn Taylor. That just wasn't going to fly. So I was known as Royce, your voice in the morning.
There you go.
That worked very well, by the way.
Royce, the voice of a man enjoying an extraordinary life.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you for your talent, your inspiration, your passion to carry on an important legacy for future generations, my friend. Thank you so much for being a part of my show today, because I love your story. I love your spirituality. I love what you do as a great entertainer, because you are, Royce Taylor, one of the great ones.
Thank you very much. Let me just say this in closing for your folks. The Word of God will never fail you in anything you face in life. It will not only sustain you in the tough times, but will open a great door for you to the future times. It is a message relevant for all times, and it's something you can count on. It is the promise of God to you. Don't miss it. Don't miss it.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you, and let's stay in contact, okay?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
We'll talk to you soon. Take care, buddy.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Every morning just to keep a job, gotta fight my way through the hustle and mob. Sounds of the city pounding in my brain, while another day goes down the drain. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 5 o'clock world when the whistle blows, no one owns a piece of my time, and there's a 5 o'clock me inside my clothes, thinking that the world looks fine. And there's a long-haired girl who waits, I know, to ease my troubled mind. In the shelter of her arms, everything's okay. She talks and the world goes slipping away. I know the reason I can still go on when every other reason is gone.